Hello, and welcome to Slience. It is truly wonderful to have you here. Maybe you had a long day, or maybe you're simply the kind of person who finds peace in the deep, rhythmic pulse of the natural world rather than the noise of everyday life. Either way, tonight's journey is for you. You've got nothing left to do but rest. Let your mind relax, your breathing slow, and your body grow light, as if you are weightless, buoyed by warm, gentle waters. Because tonight, we aren't walking on solid ground. We are drifting out into the blue embrace of our world's oceans. This is a vast, interconnected body of water that has cradled life for billions of years, moving with a slow, steady breath that circles the globe. But beneath its shimmering surface lies a world of quiet wonders. Ancient currents, hidden landscapes, and resilient creatures that thrive in places sunlight has never touched. We'll travel gently from the sun-drenched shallows to the silent, velvety depths of the open sea. You'll hear of underwater forests that sway without wind, rivers that flow beneath the waves, and the incredible, unbroken journey of water itself. You may find some of the things you hear tonight unexpected, or maybe they'll simply reveal a world that feels peaceful, spacious, and timeless, a place where everything slows down just a little. And before we drift any further, if these soothing, curious journeys help you relax or ease into the end of your day, feel free to like and subscribe. It helps more people discover this cozy corner of the world, one softened mind at a time. Now, let's begin our journey. Let's start by simply thinking about the sheer scale of the water that covers our home. When we look at a map, we see continents separated by blue spaces, but in reality, the ocean is the dominant feature of Earth. It covers 71% of the planet's surface. If you were to look at Earth from the right angle in space, specifically focused on the Pacific Ocean, you would hardly see any land at all. You would just see a vast, beautiful blue sphere suspended in the darkness. This massive body of water is so large that all of the world's continents, North and South America, Africa, Europe, Asia, Australia, and Antarctica, could fit inside the Pacific Ocean basin with room to spare. The Pacific Ocean itself was named by the explorer Ferdinand Magellan in the year 1520. After sailing through dangerous storms near South America, he entered these vast, calm waters and called them Mar Pacifico, which means peaceful sea in Portuguese. It is a fitting name for the feeling it gives us when we stand on the shore. And to give you a sense of just how vast this peaceful sea is, the Pacific Ocean is actually wider than the moon. If you could stretch the moon out flat, it wouldn't even span the width of the Pacific at its widest point. This water isn't just vast, it is incredibly ancient. The water swirling in your glass or crashing gently against the shore has been here for billions of years. Scientists believe that much of Earth's water arrived here on icy comets and asteroids that collided with our planet when it was very young. This means that the ocean is effectively made of extraterrestrial material, melted ice from the far reaches of the solar system. The water we swim in today is the same water that dinosaurs drank, recycled endlessly through the ages. It has evaporated into clouds, fallen as rain, flowed through rivers, and returned to the sea in a perfect, eternal cycle. When we talk about the oceans, we usually separate them into names we learned in school: the Atlantic, the Pacific, the Indian, the Arctic, and the Southern. But oceanographers often refer to the world ocean. Because there are no true walls or boundaries in the water, it is all one single, interconnected system. A drop of water that starts its journey off the coast of California could eventually find its way to the coast of Japan, then drift down past Australia, and circulate up to the icy waters of Norway. It is one global heartbeat, mixing and moving heat and energy around the planet to keep our climate stable. Deep within this world ocean, hidden far below the waves, where we cannot see, lies the longest mountain range on Earth. It isn't the Andes or the Rockies or the Himalayas. It is the mid-ocean ridge system. This underwater mountain chain winds its way around the globe like the stitching on a baseball, stretching for over 40,000 miles. It is 4 times longer than the Andes, yet it remains almost entirely submerged, wrapped in the quiet dark of the deep sea. Here, the Earth is constantly creating new crust, pushing the continents apart at a pace that is about as fast as your fingernails grow. While the mountains grow in the dark, the water itself holds treasures that are nearly invisible. We know the ocean is salty, but few people realize that the ocean contains vast amounts of dissolved gold. It is estimated that there are about 20 million tons of gold suspended in ocean water. However, it is so diluted that in every liter of seawater, there are only about 13 billionths of a gram of gold. It is a treasure that cannot be mined, only imagined, a shimmering, golden dust scattered throughout the blue, drifting endlessly with the currents. Speaking of salt, have you ever wondered why the ocean is salty in the first place? It is actually a gift from the land. When rain falls on mountains and hills, the water is slightly acidic due to carbon dioxide in the air. This rain slowly erodes the rocks, breaking them down into tiny ions and minerals. These minerals wash into streams and rivers, which eventually flow into the ocean. Over millions of years, the sun evaporates the water from the surface of the sea to create clouds, but the salt stays behind. It becomes concentrated, giving the ocean that distinct, saline taste and making the water dense enough to help us float. This saltiness varies depending on where you are. In the Atlantic Ocean, the water is generally saltier than in the Pacific. This is because the trade winds carry water vapor from the Atlantic across Central America and dump it as rain into the Pacific. The Atlantic loses fresh water to the air, becoming saltier, while the Pacific receives that fresh water, staying a little more diluted. It is a massive, invisible exchange of water between the two basins that happens every single day above our heads. But the ocean gives us something far more vital than gold or salt. It gives us breath. We often think of the Amazon rainforest as the lungs of the planet, but the ocean is actually responsible for producing between 50 and 80% of the oxygen on Earth. This oxygen comes from phytoplankton, microscopic marine plants that drift in the sunlit upper layers of the water. One specific type of bacteria, called Prochlorococcus, is so small that millions can fit in a drop of water, yet it is likely the most abundant photosynthetic organism on Earth. It produces about 20% of the oxygen in our entire biosphere. That means roughly 1 out of every 5 breaths you take, right now, was created by invisible life floating in the ocean. As we drift through these thoughts, consider the color of the sea. We call it the blue planet. But water in a glass looks clear. The ocean looks blue because of how sunlight interacts with water molecules. Water is excellent at absorbing the red, orange, and yellow parts of the sunlight spectrum. The blue wavelengths, however, are not absorbed as easily. They are scattered and reflected back to our eyes. So when you look at the deep ocean, you are seeing the light that the water rejected, the cool, calming blue that has become the signature color of our world. Beneath that blue surface, sound travels much differently than it does in the air. In fact, sound travels more than 4 times faster in water. This density allows for communication across incredible distances. There is a layer in the ocean known as the SOFAR channel, or the deep sound channel, where sound waves can get trapped and travel for thousands of miles without losing much energy. Scientists have detected low frequency whale songs that have traveled halfway across an ocean basin. Imagine a blue whale calling out in the Indian Ocean, and that slow, rhythmic sound vibrating through the water for endless miles, carrying a message through the deep silence. The ocean also acts as a massive sponge for heat. The top 10 feet of the ocean holds as much heat as our entire atmosphere. This incredible ability to store warmth is what keeps Earth livable. The ocean absorbs the intense heat of the sun during the day and slowly releases it at night and during the winter, tempering the climate so that we don't freeze or burn. It is a global thermostat, working silently and constantly to maintain the delicate balance required for life. Let's think about the tides. The rise and fall of the ocean is a dance with the moon. Even though the moon is nearly 240,000 solar miles away, its gravitational pull is strong enough to stretch the ocean, creating a bulge of water that travels around the planet. As the Earth rotates beneath this water bulge, we experience high tides and low tides. It is a predictable, rhythmic cycle that has happened every day for billions of years, a constant reminder of the celestial connection between our planet and its quiet, cratered companion. The ocean is never truly still. It is always reaching out toward the sky. Let your imagination sink below the surface, down toward the ocean floor. We often think of the bottom of the sea as a flat, sandy plain, but if we could drain the water away, we would see a landscape far more dramatic than anything on land. For instance, consider the highest mountain on Earth. You might immediately think of Mount Everest, standing tall in the Himalayas. But if we measure from the true base of the mountain to its peak, the title actually belongs to Mauna Kea in Hawaii. While it appears to be a modest island peak from the beach, Mauna Kea's base sits deep on the ocean floor. It rises over 3,000 feet from the bottom of the sea, making it significantly taller than Everest. It is a sleeping giant, mostly hidden beneath the cool Pacific waves. Close to these underwater mountains, there are valleys deeper than we can comprehend. The deepest place of all is the Mariana Trench in the Western Pacific. It is a crescent-shaped scar in the Earth's crust that plunges down nearly 7 miles. To put that in perspective, if you could place Mount Everest at the very bottom of the Mariana Trench, its peak would still be covered by over a mile of water. Down there, in a place called Challenger Deep, it is perpetually dark and incredibly quiet. The pressure is immense, like having an elephant stand on your thumb, but life still finds a way. Tiny, resilient creatures thrive in the silt, unaffected by the weight of the world above them. But the ocean floor isn't just mountains and trenches. It also has waterfalls. This might sound impossible, a waterfall under the water, but it is true. The largest waterfall on Earth isn't Angel Falls in Venezuela. It is the Denmark Strait Cataract, located between Greenland and Iceland. Here, freezing cold, dense water from the Nordic Sea meets warmer, lighter water from the Irminger Sea. The cold water is heavier, so it plummets downward beneath the warm water, dropping more than 11,000 feet. This massive underwater cascade carries countless times more water than Niagara Falls, flowing silently in the dark depths where no human eye can see it. Just as there are waterfalls, there are also rivers flowing through the ocean. We call them currents, but they act very much like rivers, with their own banks and distinct temperatures. The most famous of these is the Gulf Stream. It is a powerful, warm, and swift Atlantic Ocean current that originates in the Gulf of Mexico and flows up the eastern coast of the United States toward Europe. This river within the sea was actually mapped by Benjamin Franklin in the 18th century. He noticed that mail ships sailing from Europe took longer than whaling ships because the whalers knew how to avoid the current. The Gulf Stream moves more water than all of the world's land rivers combined, bringing warmth that keeps places like Great Britain from freezing over in winter. While the Atlantic has the Gulf Stream, the Southern Ocean has something even more powerful, the Antarctic Circumpolar Current. This is the only current that flows completely around the globe without being blocked by land. It circles Antarctica endlessly, driven by strong westerly winds. It acts as a giant blender for the world's oceans, mixing waters from the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian basins. It effectively isolates Antarctica, keeping the continent frozen and preserving the ice that stores so much of the world's fresh water. Drifting away from the currents, let's travel to the loneliest place on the map. There is a spot in the South Pacific Ocean known as Point Nemo. Its name comes from the Latin word for no one, and it is the oceanic pole of inaccessibility. This point is the farthest location from any land in any direction. If you were floating at Point Nemo, you would be more than 1,600 miles away from the nearest shore. In fact, the human beings closest to you wouldn't be sailors or islanders. They would be the astronauts aboard the International Space Station passing overhead. It is the quietest, most remote sanctuary on our planet. In these vast open spaces, the water is not just empty blue. In some places, it is teeming with life that builds its own land. The Great Barrier Reef, off the coast of Australia, is the largest living structure on Earth. It stretches for over 1,400 miles and is composed of billions of tiny organisms called coral polyps. These microscopic architects build calcium carbonate skeletons that accumulate over thousands of years. The structure is so massive that it is the only living thing visible from space. Astronauts looking down see a vibrant ribbon of turquoise and emerald green contrasting against the deep sapphire of the ocean. However, the ocean is always changing. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the map of the world is being redrawn. Due to the high movement of tectonic plates, the Atlantic Ocean is actually getting wider by about an inch or two every year. As the Americas drift away from Europe and Africa, new crust is formed at the mid-Atlantic ridge. Conversely, the Pacific Ocean is slowly shrinking. As the plates around the Pacific Ring push under the continents, the Great Ocean Basin becomes just a tiny fraction smaller each year. It is a reminder that the Earth is dynamic, breathing and shifting in a geological rhythm that spans eons. Deep below these shifting plates, there are pockets of incredible heat. For a long time, scientists believed that all life on Earth relied on the sun for energy. But in the late 1970s, explorers discovered hydrothermal vents, fissures on the seafloor that spew out water heated by magma. This water is rich in minerals and can reach temperatures of over 700 degrees Fahrenheit, yet it doesn't boil because of the extreme pressure. Around these vents, entire ecosystems exist in total darkness. Giant tube worms, ghostly white crabs, and specialized bacteria thrive here, fueled not by sunlight, but by the chemical energy of the Earth itself. It proved that life is far more resilient and adaptable than we ever imagined. And speaking of resilience, consider the shark. Sharks are often misunderstood, but they are truly ancient guardians of the sea. They have been swimming in the ocean for about 450 million years. To put that in perspective, sharks existed before trees. They were patrolling the waters before the dinosaurs walked the earth, and they survived 4 of the 5 great mass extinction events. They are living fossils, perfectly designed by evolution to keep the ocean's ecosystem in balance. moving silently through the water with a grace that has remained unchanged for millions of centuries. In the deep, cold waters of the North Atlantic, there lives a creature that understands patience better than perhaps any other. The Greenland shark is a slow, moving giant that thrives in near, freezing temperatures. These sharks grow incredibly slowly, only about 1 centimeter per year. Because of this unhurried pace, they live for centuries. Scientists have found individuals that are over 400 years old. This means there are sharks swimming today that were born before the United States became a country, drifting silently through the dark since the days of the Pilgrims. Their hearts beat only once every 10 seconds, a slow, rhythmic thrum that sustains them through the ages. While the Greenland shark hides in the dark, the blue whale glides through the open ocean as the largest animal to ever exist. It is bigger than any dinosaur that walked the earth. A blue whale can grow to 100 feet long, and its tongue alone weighs as much as an elephant. Despite their massive size, they are gentle giants, feeding almost entirely on tiny shrimp, like creatures called krill. The heart of a blue whale is truly a marvel. It is roughly the size of a small car. In fact, the main arteries are so large that a human could technically swim through them. Yet, when these massive creatures dive deep, they can slow their heart rate down to just 2 beats per minute, conserving energy in a state of deep, meditative calm. These whales are not just large, they are also the musicians of the sea. Humpback whales, in particular, are known for their complex songs. These aren't just random noises. They have structure, rhythm, and repeating patterns, much like human music. What is fascinating is that whales within a specific region will all sing the same song, but over time, the song evolves. If a whale from a different region migrates in, the local whales might pick up remixes from the newcomer. It is a form of cultural transmission, a shared language of moans and cries that travels for miles through the water, comforting the calves and connecting the pod. Not all ocean life is massive, of course. Some of the most peaceful scenes in the ocean take place in the kelp forests of the Pacific, home to the sea otter. These furry creatures have the densest fur of any animal, which keeps them warm in cold water. But their most adorable habit relates to how they sleep. To keep from drifting away from each other in the currents while they nap, sea otters will often hold hands. They also wrap themselves in strands of giant kelp, using the seaweed like a blanket or an anchor. Imagine floating on your back, wrapped in a natural blanket, holding on to a loved one, rocking gently with the waves. It is perhaps the most relaxing way to sleep in the animal kingdom. Just beneath the otters, you might find the octopus, a creature so strange it seems to belong to another planet. Octopuses are incredibly intelligent, capable of solving puzzles and using tools. But their biology is what makes them truly unique. An octopus has 3 hearts. 2 of them work exclusively to pump blood to the gills to pick up oxygen, while the 3rd pumps blood to the rest of the body. Interestingly, when an octopus swims, the systemic heart stops beating, which is exhausting for them. This is why they often prefer to crawl slowly along the seafloor rather than swim. It is literally less heartbreaking for them to take it easy. Another creature that prefers to take it easy is the seahorse. These little animals are actually very poor swimmers. They rely on a small fin on their back that flutters incredibly fast, but it doesn't give them much speed. Because they are not built for long distance travel, they spend much of their time anchored to seagrass or coral using their prehensile tails, much like a monkey uses its tail. They are content to stay in one place, swaying with the water. Seahorses are also known for their romance. They are monogamous, and greet their partners every morning with a dance that involves changing colors and spinning around each other, reinforcing their bond before they start their day. Drifting from the coral reefs to the open water, we find the jellyfish. These are some of the most ancient animals on Earth, having drifted in the currents for at least 500 million years. They are elegantly simple. A jellyfish has no brain, no heart, no bones, and no eyes. They are composed of about 95% water. They don't plan where they are going. They simply pulse and drift, surrendering completely to the flow of the ocean. There is a specific species known as the Turritopsis, thorny, often called the immortal jellyfish. When it gets old or injured, it doesn't die. Instead, it reverses its life cycle, shrinking back into a young polyp stage and starting its life over again. It is a biological loop that theoretically allows it to live forever. In the deeper parts of the ocean, where sunlight fades away, creatures have to make their own light. This is called bioluminescence. It is estimated that up to 90% of animals living in the open ocean depths can produce light. They use chemicals in their bodies to create soft blue or green glows. Some use it to attract mates, others to confuse predators, and some, like the anglerfish, use a glowing lure to attract food. If you were to descend in a submarine with the lights off, you wouldn't see total blackness. You would see a universe of tiny, twinkling stars moving past your window, a galaxy of living light in the deep sea. One of the largest creators of this light is a creature you might not expect, a colony called a siphonophore. One species, the giant siphonophore, is actually a collection of tiny individual organisms working together as one long string-like body. These can grow to be longer than a blue whale, reaching lengths of up to 150 feet. They drift slowly through the deep, trailing thousands of tentacles like a living curtain. Despite their size, they are incredibly delicate, breaking apart if handled roughly. They are ghosts of the deep, silent and glowing, drifting endlessly through the void. Let's think about the water itself and how it moves energy. When you watch a wave travel across the ocean, the water itself isn't actually traveling from one side of the sea to the other. It is just energy moving through the water. The water molecules move in small circles, lifting up and down as the energy passes through them, like a stadium wave performed by fans. That wave you see crashing on the beach might have been born from a storm thousands of miles away. It carried that energy all the way to you, a long, distance message delivered in a crash of white foam, connecting your shore to a distant corner of the world. Let's rest our minds on the image of an island. While continents are vast and busy, islands are often quiet, solitary places. But how do they get there? Many islands, like the Hawaiian chain, are born from fire. Deep beneath the tectonic plates, there is a hot spot, a plume of magma from the Earth's mantle that melts through the crust like a blowtorch. As the Pacific plate slowly drifts over this stationary hotspot, a volcano forms, rises above the waves, and becomes an island. Eventually, the plate moves the island away from the heat source. The volcano goes dormant, and a new island begins to form behind it. It is a slow, geological conveyor belt, creating paradise one island at a time over millions of years. While some islands are born, others are built. In the Maldives, the beautiful white sand beaches are actually the result of fish, specifically the parrotfish. These colorful fish graze on coral reefs to eat the algae growing on them. In the process, they bite off chunks of the coral skeleton, which is made of calcium carbonate. They digest the organic material and excrete the hard calcium as fine white sand. A single large parrotfish can produce hundreds of pounds of sand a year. So, when you imagine lying on a soft, tropical beach, you are resting on the finely processed remnants of an ancient reef, cycled through the life of a busy, colorful fish. Far to the south, the ocean changes character entirely. The waters around Antarctica are so cold that fish have evolved a natural antifreeze. The Antarctic icefish has no hemoglobin, the red protein that carries oxygen in our blood. Its blood is clear, like water. It absorbs oxygen directly from the freezing, oxygen, rich ocean through its skin. But even more fascinating is the antifreeze protein in its body that prevents ice, crystals, from growing in its veins. It lives comfortably in water that would freeze almost any other creature solid, a ghostly, transparent survivor in a world of ice. Speaking of ice, the icebergs that drift in these polar seas are ancient freshwater time capsules. An iceberg is not made of frozen seawater. It is a piece of a glacier that broke off from land. The ice in a large iceberg can be more than 10,000 years old. As they melt, they make a distinct fizzing sound. This sound, often called bergy seltzer, is caused by tiny bubbles of ancient air popping. These bubbles were trapped in the snow thousands of years ago, compressed into the ice, and are finally being released back into the atmosphere. If you were close enough to listen, you would hear the air of a prehistoric world escaping into the modern day. The ocean also has a fascinating relationship with sound in the Arctic. Under the ice, the acoustic environment is unique. Because the ice acts as a lid, isolating the water from the wind and waves above, the Arctic Ocean can be one of the quietest places on Earth. However, when the ice cracks or shifts, it creates strange, otherworldly noises, creaks, groans, and pings that echo through the water. Seals and whales living there have adapted their calls to cut through these distinct acoustic conditions, singing songs that bounce off the underside of the ice, traveling for miles in the freezing dark. Let's travel back to warmer waters and look at something we often take for granted: the color of the sand. We mentioned white sand, but ocean beaches come in a rainbow of colors depending on the geology of the coast. There are black sand beaches in Hawaii and Iceland, formed from eroded volcanic lava. There are green sand beaches, rare gems created by a mineral called olivine found in certain volcanic rocks. And there are pink sand beaches, like those in the Bahamas. This soft pink hue comes from the crushed shells of microscopic coral insects called foraminifera. These tiny creatures have pink or red shells, and when they die, the waves grind them into a powder that mixes with the sand, blushing the shoreline with a gentle rose color. The ocean affects not just the land, but the sky above it. The majority of the clouds you see floating overhead began their life in the ocean. The sun warms the surface of the sea, causing water to evaporate. This invisible vapor rises on warm air currents until it cools and condenses into tiny droplets, forming clouds. These clouds are the vessels that carry fresh water from the salty sea to the thirsty land. Without the ocean's vast surface area acting as a global humidifier, our continents would be dry, barren deserts. It is a constant, silent gift, water rising from the waves to fall softly on our forests and fields. Even the salt spray from the ocean plays a role in the clouds. When waves crash, they throw tiny droplets of salt water into the air. The water evaporates, leaving behind microscopic salt crystals. These crystals, known as sea salt aerosols, drift high into the atmosphere. They act as seeds for clouds. Water vapor clings to the salt particles, helping clouds to form. So, the white, fluffy clouds you see on a summer day might have a heart of ocean salt, a tiny crystal that journeyed from the crashing surf to the high heavens. In the vast expanse of the Pacific, there exists a phenomenon known as the doldrums, or the intertropical convergence zone. This is a belt around the Earth near the equator, where the trade winds from the northern and southern hemispheres meet. The rising warm air here can create a vacuum where the winds simply stop blowing. For sailors in the age of wind, powered ships, the doldrums were a place of intense stillness. The sea would become like a mirror, perfectly flat and glassy, reflecting the sky so perfectly that the horizon disappeared. Ships could drift for weeks without moving, suspended in a breathless, blue eternity. Let's consider the hidden lakes within the ocean. Deep on the sea floor, particularly in the Gulf of Mexico, there are pools of hot water that are separate from the ocean around them. These are called brine pools. They are extremely salty, so dense that the brine does not mix with the regular seawater. It settles in depressions on the bottom, forming a distinct lake with its own shoreline and surface. You could literally drive a submarine over a lake at the bottom of the ocean. These pools are often surrounded by mussels and other creatures, creating an eerie, underwater oasis that looks like a beach scene from a different dimension. Let's drift back to the surface and think about the travelers of the sea. One of the most remarkable navigators is the loggerhead, sea turtle. When these turtles hatch on a sandy beach, they are tiny, vulnerable creatures scrambling toward the surf. Once they hit the water, they embark on a journey that lasts for years, often crossing entire ocean basins. We call this period the lost years because, for a long time, scientists didn't know where they went. But the most amazing part happens decades later. When it is time to lay their own eggs, the female turtles return to the exact same beach where they were born. They guide themselves across thousands of miles of open blue water by sensing the magnetic field of the Earth. It is as if they have an internal GPS locked onto the magnetic signature of their home, guiding them back to the start of their circle of life. While turtles travel horizontally, there is a constant, gentle vertical journey happening everywhere in the ocean. It is called marine snow. It sounds poetic, and it looks beautiful, too. In the deep ocean, sunlight doesn't reach, so plants cannot grow. The animals down there rely on food falling from above. This food comes in the form of tiny flakes of organic matter, remnants of life from the surface. Dust and sand that clump together and drift slowly downward. If you were in a submersible with the headlights on, it would look exactly like a quiet winter blizzard. This silent, endless snowfall provides energy to the deepest parts of the world, a gentle gift from the sunlit world to the dark one below. Speaking of the deep, the water down there moves with incredible slowness. We talked about surface currents like the Gulf Stream, but there is also a global conveyor belt of deep water. It is driven by temperature and saltiness. Cold, salty water is dense, so it sinks in the North Atlantic. It then flows south, wraps around Antarctica, and moves up into the Pacific and Indian Oceans. This journey is incredibly slow. A single drop of water that sinks near Greenland might not resurface in the Pacific for 1,000 years. The water moving through the deep ocean right now last saw the sunlight during the Middle Ages. It is a slow, rhythmic mixing that regulates the heartbeat of the planet over millennia. In these deep waters, sleep looks very different. If you were lucky enough to stumble upon a pod of sperm whales napping, you would see a surreal sight. Sperm whales sleep vertically. They drift in the water column, noses pointing up or down, looking like massive, submerged logs suspended in the blue. They hover there in total silence, huddled together in a pod. During this time, they enter a state of unihemispheric sleep, where they shut down parts of their brain to rest while maintaining enough awareness to breathe and stay together. It is a hauntingly peaceful image. Giant, intelligent beings, suspended motionless in the liquid void. Closer to the sunlit shores, there are meadows that rival the most beautiful fields on land. Seagrass beds are vast, underwater prairies that wave gently with the currents. These meadows are quiet powerhouses. Despite covering less than 2% of the ocean floor, seagrass meadows hold roughly 10% of the ocean's carbon. They capture carbon from the water up to 5 times faster than tropical rainforests do on land. As the grass sways back and forth, it is scrubbing the water and the air, acting as a natural filter that keeps our atmosphere in balance, all while providing a nursery for tiny fish and crabs. Hidden within these grasses and coral reefs are creatures that look like they were painted by an artist with a vivid imagination. They are called nudibranchs, but you might know them as sea slugs. Unlike the garden variety, these are the butterflies of the ocean. They come in neon blues, bright oranges, deep purples, and every color in between. Some are no bigger than your fingernail. They are slow, deliberate travelers. Interestingly, because they are soft and have no shell, they have evolved a unique defense. They eat toxic sponges or stinging jellyfish and repurpose those toxins for their own skin. They are beautiful, but they are also untouchable, moving with a confidence that belies their tiny size. Let's change our focus to the seabed itself. We often think of communication as satellites in the sky, but the internet actually lives in the ocean. Roughly 99% of all international data traffic travels through submarine cables laid on the ocean floor. These cables are only about as thick as a garden hose, yet they carry the world's emails, videos, and phone calls. They stretch across the Atlantic and Pacific, resting quietly in the mud, sometimes thousands of feet deep. It is a poetic thought. While we sit at our computers or check our phones, our connections are physically pulses of light traveling through thin glass fibers, wrapped in steel, resting in the cold, dark silence of the ocean floor. Sometimes, the ocean brings things together in unexpected ways. In the Pacific Ocean, between Hawaii and California, there is a spot that scientists have nicknamed the white shark calf. For years, researchers thought great white sharks were coastal hunters, but tracking tags revealed that they travel vast distances to this specific, seemingly empty patch of open ocean. They hang out there for months, diving deep and coming back up. Scientists still aren't 100% sure why they go there, perhaps to mate, perhaps to feed on deep sea squid. It is a secret gathering place for the ocean's top predators, a hidden social club in the middle of nowhere. The ocean also has a way of preserving history. Because the deep sea is cold, dark, and lacking in oxygen, shipwrecks can be preserved for centuries. There are wooden ships sitting on the bottom of the Black Sea that are thousands of years old, yet they look as if they sank yesterday. The masts are still standing. The intricate carvings are still visible. In the deep ocean, wood, boring worms cannot survive, so the ocean acts as a museum. These ships are time capsules, sitting silently in the dark. Their cargo holds still full, waiting for no one, simply existing as monuments to the sailors of the past. Finally, consider the sound of the shoreline. That crashing sound of waves is not just water hitting sand, it is the sound of air. When a wave curls over and breaks, it traps a cylinder of air inside the tube. As the water collapses, that air is compressed and then explodes out, creating the roar and the foam. The white foam you see is just millions of tiny bubbles. As those bubbles pop, they release a faint mist. So, the relaxing sound of the surf that helps so many of us fall asleep is actually the sound of the ocean breathing, a rhythmic release of energy and air that has been exhaling against the continents since the oceans were born. Drifting further into the wonders of the Atlantic, we encounter a sea that breaks all the rules. It is called the Sargasso Sea. Unlike every other sea on Earth, the Sargasso Sea has no shores. It is not bounded by land, but by currents. The Gulf Stream forms its western wall, the North Atlantic Current, its northern, the Canary Current, its eastern, and the North Atlantic Equatorial Current, its southern. Within these moving walls of water lies a vast, slow, rotating pool of calm blue water. It is famous for the golden, brown seaweed called sargassum that floats on the surface. This seaweed never attaches to the seafloor. It lives its entire life drifting under the open sky, creating a floating golden rainforest in the middle of the ocean that serves as a nursery for baby turtles and a hiding place for tiny fish. This shoreless sea is also the site of one of nature's greatest mysteries, the migration of the freshwater eel. Eels found in rivers across North America and Europe, creatures that live in mud and fresh water, will eventually feel a call to return to the ocean. They swim thousands of miles down rivers and across the open ocean to reach the Sargasso Sea. Here, in the deep, warm waters, they spawn and then pass away. Their tiny, transparent offspring, called glass eels, then drift with the currents for years, eventually finding the exact river mouths their parents came from. It is a navigational feat that scientists still do not fully understand, a silent homing instinct that spans continents and oceans. Let's move from the deep Atlantic to the warm, shallow springs of Florida and the Caribbean, where we find the manatee. These gentle animals are often called sea cows, and for good reason. They are herbivores, spending up to 8 hours a day grazing on seagrass. They are incredibly peaceful. They have no natural predators and no aggressive behaviors. Manatees are actually related to elephants, and you can see the resemblance in their gray skin and their dexterity. A manatee uses its flippers almost like hands to hold food while it eats. They move through the water with a slow, rolling grace, often somersaulting just for the fun of it. To watch a manatee is to watch a creature that is never in a rush, living life at the pace of a slow, moving river. While manatees enjoy the quiet, the ocean surface can sometimes be a drum. Have you ever wondered what rain sounds like from underwater? If you were to hover just a few feet beneath the surface during a rainstorm, the sound is surprisingly loud and distinct. It doesn't sound like rain on a roof. It sounds like thousands of tiny marbles striking a glass table. It is a mesmerizing, crackling hiss that fills the upper ocean. For marine animals, this sound is a signal. It changes how sound travels and can provide cover for prey to move without being heard. It is a natural white noise machine, a ceiling of static that lulls the underwater world. Deeper down, the ocean is home to animals that are masters of disguise. The cuttlefish is a relative of the squid and octopus, and it is perhaps the most advanced color changer on the planet. Its skin is covered in millions of pigment cells, called chromatophores, which are attached to tiny muscles. By flexing these muscles, the cuttlefish can change its color and pattern in the blink of an eye. It can even change the texture of its skin to mimic the bumpiness of a rock. or the smoothness of kelp. But the most relaxing fact about them is their eyes. They have W-shaped pupils that allow them to see polarized light, giving them a view of the world that we can't even imagine, seeing contrasts and hidden patterns in the blue that are invisible to us. In the coral reefs of the Indo-Pacific, there is a shark that prefers to walk rather than swim. The epaulet shark is a small, slender shark with spots that look like military epaulets on its shoulders. It lives in tide pools that often get cut off from the ocean when the tide goes out. To survive, it has evolved strong pectoral fins that it uses to literally walk across the reef and even over dry land for short distances to get from one pool to another. It waddles like a salamander. It is a charming reminder that evolution is playful. Turning a predator of the deep into a little walker of the shallows. Speaking of reefs, we usually think of coral as growing in sunlit, tropical waters. But deep in the ocean, far below where sunlight can reach, there are cold, water coral reefs. These corals do not have the symbiotic algae that tropical corals use to make food from the sun. Instead, they rely solely on catching drifting particles of food from the current. Because food is scarce and the water is cold, they grow incredibly slowly. Some of these deep, sea gold corals are among the oldest living animals on Earth. Scientists have dated individual coral colonies that are over 4,000 years old. They were growing in the dark before the Egyptian pyramids were built, standing as silent, fragile monuments in the deep. The ocean floor, where these corals live, is often covered in something scientists call marine ooze. It's not a very pretty name, but it is a beautiful record of history. This soft sediment is made up of the microscopic shells of plankton that have fallen to the bottom over millions of years. It accumulates incredibly slowly, sometimes only a centimeter every 1,000 years. Because it builds up so gently and is rarely disturbed, this ooze acts like the pages of a book. By drilling into it, scientists can read the history of Earth's climate, seeing exactly how warm the oceans were or how much ice existed millions of years ago, all preserved in the soft, silent mud. In this deep environment, even death creates life. When a great whale reaches the end of its life and sinks to the seafloor, it creates a phenomenon known as a whale fall. In the biological desert of the deep sea, a single whale carcass provides a sudden, massive oasis of food. It can support a specialized ecosystem for decades. First, scavengers arrive, then smaller organisms, and finally, specialized bacteria that break down the bones. It is a process of slow, respectful recycling. The energy that the whale gathered from the sunlit surface over its long life is gifted back to the darkness, sustaining hundreds of species in a quiet, 50-year cycle of renewal. Let's look at the connection between the ocean and the moon through the eyes of the coral. Once a year, usually a few days after the full moon in late spring or early summer, something magical happens on the Great Barrier Reef. It is called a mass spawning event. As if on a silent cue, billions of corals release their eggs and sperm into the water at the exact same time. It looks like an underwater snowstorm moving in reverse, with pink and white flakes rising toward the surface. This synchronization is crucial for their survival, but how they coordinate it so perfectly remains a wonder. They sense the temperature, the salinity, and the light of the moon, waiting for the perfect moment to release new life into the currents, all breathing together in a single, global rhythm. As we continue to float through these waters, let's consider the ocean's incredible ability to preserve the past. We spoke of shipwrecks before, but sometimes the ocean preserves more than just wood. In 2010, divers exploring a shipwreck in the Baltic Sea found bottles of champagne that had been resting on the seafloor for nearly 170 years. Because it was dark, constantly cold, and under pressure, the wine was perfectly preserved. When experts tasted it, they described it as sweet and fresh. It is a charming thought that the ocean floor acts as a natural, high-quality wine cellar, keeping delicate treasures safe and unchanged while the world above moves through wars, revolutions, and eras. In the deep parts of the ocean, the rules of size seem to change. There is a phenomenon known as deep sea gigantism. For reasons scientists think relate to the cold temperatures and high oxygen levels, animals in the deep tend to grow much larger than their shallow water cousins. The Japanese spider crab is a perfect example. It looks like a creature from a dream, with long, spindly legs that can span 12 feet from tip to tip. Despite their intimidating size, they are gentle scavengers. They move slowly and gracefully across the seafloor on their stilts, stepping lightly over the mud, quiet wanderers in the dark. There is another creature of the deep that is literally made of glass. The Venus flower basket is a type of glass sponge found in the deep Pacific. Its skeleton is made of silica, the same material as window glass, woven into an intricate, lace-like cylinder. It is incredibly delicate and beautiful. Inside this glass cage, you will often find a pair of small shrimp, a male and a female. They enter the sponge when they are tiny larvae, but as they grow, they become too large to escape through the sponge's mesh. They spend their entire lives inside this crystal palace, safe from predators, cleaning the sponge while the sponge provides food. In some cultures, these dried sponges are given as wedding gifts, symbolizing a bond that lasts a lifetime. On the other end of the size spectrum, the ocean is filled with microscopic jewels called diatoms. These are a type of phytoplankton, but they are unique because they build protective walls out of silica. Essentially, they live in tiny glass houses. Under a microscope, they look like ornate jewelry, perfect circles, stars, triangles, and ribbons, all made of transparent opal. There are trillions of them in the ocean, and when they die, their tiny glass shells fall to the bottom. They are so abundant that they help balance the chemistry of the water, proving that the smallest, most fragile things often carry the heaviest weight of the ecosystem. Let's move to the relationship between different species. In the coral reefs, there are places known as cleaning stations. These are like neutral ground, or a spa day for fish. Small fish, like the cleaner wrassa, set up shop at a specific piece of coral. Larger fish, even sharks and barracudas, will swim up and wait patiently in line. They stop swimming, tilt their bodies, and open their mouths wide. The tiny cleaner fish swim inside the predator's mouth to eat parasites and dead skin. It is a remarkable truce. The predator ignores its instinct to eat the small fish, and the small fish trusts the predator completely. It is a moment of mutual care that happens thousands of times a day. While some fish clean, others glide. The flying fish does not actually fly like a bird, but it has evolved pectoral fins that act like wings. To escape danger, it swims rapidly toward the surface and launches itself into the air. Once airborne, it can glide for over 600 feet, skimming just above the waves. It is surfing on the cushion of air that sits right on top of the water. Imagine the feeling of breaking the surface tension, leaving the heavy drag of the water behind, and silently soaring through the salty air before splashing back into the blue. The ocean also holds secrets about the history of our planet's rotation. We know that coral grows in daily layers, much like tree rings. By looking at fossilized corals from 400 million years ago, scientists discovered something fascinating about time. The ancient corals show that there used to be about 400 days in a year, not 365. This means the Earth was spinning faster back then, and the days were shorter, only about 2 hours long. The friction of the ocean tides, pulling against the Earth for millions of years, has slowly acted as a brake, lengthening our days and slowing our spin to the comfortable 24-hour rhythm we have now. Sometimes, the ocean creates art that can be seen from space. In certain conditions, huge populations of phytoplankton bloom at once. These algal blooms create swirling patterns of turquoise and green that stretch for hundreds of miles. They follow the eddies and currents of the water, looking like marbling on paper or milk stirred into coffee. Satellites looking down capture these breathtaking images, living paintings created by billions of microscopic organisms drifting in unison, coloring the sea with life. As we near the end of this section, let's look outward. We often feel that Earth is unique because of our oceans, and while our blue surface is special, we are not the only ocean world. One of Jupiter's moons, Europa, is covered in a thick shell of ice. But beneath that frozen crust, scientists are almost certain there is a vast, liquid saltwater ocean. In fact, Europa likely has 2 to 3 times more liquid water than all of Earth's oceans combined. It is a comforting thought to know that we have a sister ocean in the solar system, a silent, dark sea hidden beneath the ice, waiting to be discovered, circling the giant king of planets. Consider the concept of the antipode. If you were to dig a tunnel straight through the center of the Earth from where you are standing, where would you come out? For most people on land, the answer is the ocean. Only a small percentage of land on Earth has land directly on the opposite side. If you are in the United States and you dig through the planet, you will emerge in the Indian Ocean, southwest of Australia. It means that beneath your feet, thousands of miles down and through the core, lies the deep blue sea. We are effectively floating on a rock that is sandwiched between the sky above and the ocean below, no matter which side of the planet we are on. Let's return gently to the shoreline. Imagine yourself standing there for a moment. The sun is setting, casting long, golden shadows across the water, and the air is cooling down. We are going to spend a long time here, examining the small, hidden details that usually go unnoticed, and then we will sink deeper than we have ever gone before. Let's begin with the ground beneath your feet. We often think of the ocean as a powerful, crushing force, but it is also a patient sculptor. Consider the journey of sea glass. When a piece of sharp, broken glass, perhaps a bottle thrown overboard by a sailor 100 years ago, falls into the sea, the ocean accepts it. It does not break it further. Instead, it begins a decades-long process of softening it. The waves tumble the shard over sand and stone, day after day, year after year. The ocean acts like a giant, gentle rock tumbler. It slowly grinds away the sharp edges, frosting the surface with a network of microscopic scratches. It takes between 20 and 40 years for the ocean to turn a jagged, dangerous piece of refuse into a smooth, rounded gem that feels like a worry stone in your hand. It is a lovely reminder that given enough time and gentle persistence, even the sharpest things can be softened and made beautiful by the water. Resting on the sand nearby, you might find the white, star-etched disc of a sand dollar. While we usually find them as white, brittle skeletons, when they are alive, they are quite different. Living sand dollars are covered in a velvet, like skin of tiny, moving spines, often in rich shades of purple or fuzzy brown. They cover the seafloor in crowded, peaceful colonies, sometimes standing on their edges to catch currents. There is a quiet legend about the sand dollar that says, if you break a dried one open, 5 small, white, bird-shaped bones fall out. These are actually the animal's teeth, part of a complex jaw structure scientists call Aristotle's lantern. But to the casual observer, they look exactly like white doves. It is a hidden symbol of peace tucked away inside a shell that looks like a coin from an underwater kingdom. Let's look closer at the sand itself. If you were to take a single pinch of sand from the beach and look at it under a powerful microscope, you would not just see rocks. You would see a history of the ocean. You might see a tiny, perfect spiral shell, no bigger than a grain of salt. You might see a fragment of a sea urchin's spine, a shard of coral, or a tiny gemstone of olivine. Every handful of sand is a graveyard of ancient reefs and a library of geology, ground down to the finest powder. In some places, like the beaches of Okinawa, the sand is actually composed entirely of the tiny, star-shaped shells of microscopic organisms called foraminifera. You are walking on billions of tiny stars. If you are standing on that shore, watching the sunset, breathing in the salt air, you might catch a glimpse of a rare phenomenon known as the green flash. This happens at the very last second of sunset, just as the sun slips below the horizon. The atmosphere acts like a prism, separating the sunlight into different colors. The blue and violet light gets scattered by the dense air, and the red and orange light dips below the horizon first. For a split second, only the green light remains visible, creating a brilliant, silent emerald spark on the water. It is a fleeting moment of magic that sailors have watched for centuries, a silent signal that the day has officially ended and the night has begun. Now, let's slip into the water and travel north, back to the icy, quiet waters of the Arctic to visit the narwhal. Often called the unicorn of the sea, the narwhal is famous for its long, spiral tusk. For centuries, kings and queens paid fortunes for these tusks, believing they were proof of magical unicorns. For a long time, scientists thought this tusk was a weapon used for battling rivals, a sword for underwater duels. But modern science has found something much more sensitive and beautiful. The tusk is actually a tooth that grows through the lip, and it is packed with millions of nerve endings. It is a sensory organ, like a sensitive weather station or a barometer. The narwhal uses it to detect subtle changes in the water's temperature, pressure, and salinity. Rather than a sword, it is a wand of feeling, allowing the narwhal to understand its frozen world with incredible precision. When two narwhals cross tusks, they may not be fighting, but rather sensing each other, a gentle rubbing of senses in the dark water. Sharing these cold waters is the beluga whale. These are the most vocal of all whales, earning them the nickname canaries of the sea. They chirp, click, whistle, and squeal, creating a constant, cheerful chatter underwater. If you were in a wooden boat in the Arctic, you might hear their songs resonating through the hull. But physically, they are unique because they are one of the few whales that can turn their heads. Most whales have fused neck vertebrae for stability in the water, but belugas have flexible necks. This gives them a curious, human-like quality. They can nod and look around, observing their world, and us, with a gentle curiosity. Their permanent smile is fixed by their anatomy, but it fits their playful, social nature perfectly. Let's drift south now, riding the currents until the water turns warm and turquoise. Here, we find the largest fish in the sea, the whale shark. Despite their name and their size, they can grow as large as a school bus, reaching lengths of 40 feet or more. They are incredibly docile. They are filter feeders, swimming with their wide mouths open to catch tiny plankton and krill. They pose no threat to humans. In fact, divers often swim right alongside them in total safety, dwarfed by the shark's massive, spotted frame. What is truly beautiful about them is their skin. A whale shark is covered in white spots and stripes against a dark gray background. Much like a human fingerprint, the pattern of spots is unique to every single shark. Scientists use photos of these star fields on their skin to identify and track individual sharks as they cruise slowly through the tropical oceans, like living constellations mapping the seas. Gliding beneath the whale shark, you might see the manta ray. These creatures are related to sharks, but they have evolved into graceful acrobats. Manta rays are massive, with wingspans that can reach 29 feet, yet they feed on microscopic plankton. To eat, they often perform underwater somersaults. They swim in vertical loops, rolling backward over and over again to funnel water into their mouths. It looks like a slow motion dance. They are also known to be highly intelligent, possessing the largest brain, 2 body ratio of any fish. Divers report that mantas will often approach them out of curiosity, looking them in the eye with a gentle intelligence that bridges the gap between species. They seem to enjoy the feeling of bubbles from scuba divers hitting their bellies, often hovering in the stream of bubbles for a ticklish massage. In these tropical waters, we also find the parrotfish, which we touched on earlier. But let's look at their sleeping habits. At night, the ocean is a dangerous place, filled with predators like moray eels and sharks. To stay safe, some species of parrotfish have evolved a brilliant bedtime routine. Before they go to sleep, they secrete a mucus bubble from their mouths. This bubble envelops their entire body, creating a transparent sleeping bag. It masks their scent, making them invisible to predators that hunt by smell, and it acts as an early warning system. If anything touches the bubble, the fish wakes up and darts away. It is a cozy, protective cocoon, allowing them to rest peacefully in the dangerous dark. Let's go deeper now, down to the twilight zone of the ocean, about 2,000 feet deep. Here, we find a creature that defies time, the coelacanth. For years, scientists believed this fish had gone extinct 6 million years ago, along with the dinosaurs. We only knew it from fossils. But in 1938, a museum curator in South Africa found a strange, blue fish on a fishing trawler. It was a living coelacanth. It was as if a T-Rex had suddenly walked out of the jungle. These fish are large, slow, moving, and have lobed fins that move almost like legs, hinting at the evolutionary transition from water to land. They live in deep, rocky caves, drifting passively to save energy. They are living ghosts, survivors of a world we can barely imagine, proving that the ocean is a place where the past never truly dies. Deeper still, in the complete darkness, lives the vampire squid. Its scientific name is Vampiroteuthis infernalis, which translates to vampire squid from hell. It is a terrifying name for a very gentle, small creature. It doesn't suck blood. It eats marine snow, the falling detritus we spoke of earlier. It has large blue eyes, proportionally the largest eyes in the animal kingdom, to catch the faintest glimmers of bioluminescence. When threatened, it doesn't shoot ink like a normal squid, because ink is useless in the dark. Instead, it turns itself inside out, exposing spiny filaments to look scary, and releases a cloud of glowing, bioluminescent mucus balls to confuse its attacker. It is a shy, glowing scavenger, living a quiet life in the shadow of the deep. Speaking of bioluminescence, did you know that the color of light in the ocean is not random? Most bioluminescent animals produce blue or green light. This is because blue light travels farthest in water. Red light is absorbed very quickly, so below a certain depth, red simply looks black. Because of this, many deep sea animals are red. Being red in a blue world makes you invisible. However, there is one predator, the dragonfish, that has a secret weapon. It can produce red bioluminescence from a special organ under its eye. It also has eyes that can see red light, which most other deep sea creatures cannot. This gives the dragonfish a night vision sniper scope. It can shine a red spotlight on its prey without the prey ever knowing it is being watched. It is a secret channel of communication and hunting, a private wavelength of light in the obsidian dark. Now, let's consider the floor of the deep ocean. In vast stretches of the Pacific, the seabed is covered in something called polymetallic nodules. These look like potatoes made of rock, scattered across the mud. They are formed as minerals in the seawater slowly precipitate around a core, maybe a shark tooth or a piece of shell. They grow incredibly slowly, only a few millimeters every million years. A nodule the size of a golf ball might be millions of years old. They sit there in the silence, gathering metals like manganese and nickel from the water, ancient stones growing in the dark, untouched for eons. And what about the water itself? We often think of water as just H2O, but ocean water is a complex soup. It contains nearly every element on the periodic table. We mentioned the gold, but there is also uranium, magnesium, and calcium. Interestingly, the pH of the ocean has remained relatively stable for millions of years, thanks to a natural buffering system involving carbon dioxide and limestone. The ocean is constantly breathing in carbon dioxide from the air and locking it away in the depths. Without this carbon sink function, our planet would be much hotter. The ocean has quietly absorbed about 30% of the carbon dioxide humans have produced, shielding us from the worst effects of climate change, a silent, global guardian, taking the heat for us. Let's float back up to the surface and think about how the ocean connects to the stars. Navigators for thousands of years have used the stars to cross the trackless blue. The Polynesians were the masters of this. Long before GPS or compasses, they navigated the vast Pacific in canoes. They used stick charts, maps made of sticks and shells. The shells represented islands, and the curved sticks represented the patterns of waves and swells caused by the islands. They could lie in the bottom of their canoes and feel the rhythm of the waves through the hull to know where land was, even if it was hundreds of miles away. They read the ocean like Braille, trusting the water to tell them where the world was hiding. Let's move from the methods of human navigation to the instinctual journeys of the marine world. There is a migration happening right now, beneath the surface, that makes any human journey look small. It is the journey of the gray whale. Every year, these massive creatures swim from the warm, protected lagoons of Baja, California, all the way up to the freezing, nutrient-rich waters of the Arctic and Alaska. It is a round trip of up to 12,000 miles. What is most touching about this journey is the pace. A mother gray whale traveling with her new calf moves slowly, staying close to the shore to avoid orcas. The calf learns the route by swimming in the slipstream of its mother, nestled against her side, where the water resistance is lower. They are not in a rush. They are simply moving with the seasons, a slow, rhythmic pulse of life tracing the edge of the North American continent. But there is another migration that happens every single day, and it involves far more mass than the whales. It is known as the Deal vertical migration. In the open ocean, the surface waters are dangerous during the day because the sun makes everything visible to predators. So, billions of tiny creatures, zooplankton, small shrimp, and jellyfish spend their daylight hours hiding in the dark, cold waters about 1,000 feet down. They wait there, suspended in the gloom, conserving energy. Then, as the sun sets and the sky turns purple and then black, a silent signal is given. This massive cloud of life begins to rise. They swim upward to the surface to feed on the phytoplankton that grew in the sun during the day. It is the largest migration of biomass on the planet, and it happens every night. In World War II, sonar operators were confused because their instruments showed a false bottom or a solid floor where the ocean should have been thousands of feet deep. It turned out they were bouncing sound, waves off this dense layer of billions of tiny creatures rising for their nightly feast. Just before dawn, they all sink back down into the shadows, vanishing before the sun can find them. Drifting among these migrating creatures are the salps. These are fascinating, gelatinous animals that look a bit like jellyfish, but they are actually more closely related to humans because they have a primitive nerve cord. Salps often link together to form long, glowing chains that can be several yards long. They move by pumping water through their bodies, which also feeds them. They are incredibly efficient vacuum cleaners of the sea. As they eat algae, they package the carbon into heavy pellets that sink rapidly to the ocean floor. These living crystal chandeliers are silently scrubbing our atmosphere, sequestering tons of carbon in the deep sea simply by drifting and eating. Let's move closer to the kelp forests of the Pacific coast to look at a creature with a secret pocket. We mentioned the sea otter holding hands, but did you know they also have a favorite rock? Sea otters have a loose patch of skin under their forearms that acts remarkably like a pocket. They use this pouch to store food they have gathered from the bottom, but they also use it to carry their favorite stone. An otter will find a rock that is just the right shape and weight for cracking open clams and mussels. They will keep this specific rock for a long time, tucking it into their armpit pocket while they swim and dive. It is a charming detail, a wild animal with a cherished tool that it carries around like a prized possession. On the sandy floors, where the otters don't venture, we find the hermit crab. These crabs do not grow their own shells. They have to find empty snail shells to protect their soft abdomens. As they grow, they need to upgrade to a larger house. This leads to one of the most polite social interactions in the animal kingdom, known as a vacancy chain. When a new, large shell washes up, a crab that is too small for it will wait next to it. Other crabs will gather, and they will line up in order of size, from biggest to smallest, holding on to each other. When a crab large enough for the new shell finally arrives, it moves in. The crab that just vacated its old shell passes it down to the next crab in line, who passes its old shell to the next one, and so on. In a matter of minutes, a dozen crabs all upgrade their homes in a perfect, orderly cascade of real estate swapping. Let's leave the coast and head out into the vast, open blue to listen to a very specific sound. In 1989, a hydrophone network originally designed to track submarines detected a whale call. But this call was different. Blue whales usually call at a frequency of 15 to 20 hertz. A low rumble felt more than heard. This whale, however, was singing at 52 hertz. It is a slightly higher pitch, roughly the same as the lowest note on a tuba. For years, Scientists tracked this single voice roaming the North Pacific. They called him 52 Blue. He appears to be a hybrid, perhaps between a blue whale and a fin whale. For a long time, people called him the loneliest whale in the world because they thought no other whales could hear him. But newer science suggests that while his voice is unique, it isn't inaudible to others. He may be odd, but he is likely not alone. He is simply a unique singer, roaming the vast ocean, broadcasting his own distinct song to the deep, a soloist in the great choir of the sea. Speaking of sound, fish perceive the world in a way we can barely imagine. We rely heavily on sight, but light doesn't travel far in water. Sound and pressure, however, travel beautifully. Fish have a sensory organ running down the length of their bodies called the lateral line. If you look closely at a fish, you can often see a faint line along its side. This organ is made of tiny hair cells filled with jelly, similar to the inner ear in humans. It allows the fish to feel touch at a distance. They can detect the pressure wave of a predator approaching before they see it, or feel the movements of their schoolmates to swim in perfect unison without crashing. It is a sixth sense, a way of feeling the shape of the water itself. Now, let's look at the geology that is hidden from our eyes. We all know about islands, but the ocean is full of seamounts, underwater mountains that never quite broke the surface. There are estimated to be over 100,000 seamounts across the globe, but we have explored less than 1% of them. These underwater peaks are like oases in a desert. As deep currents hit the side of a seamount, the water is forced upward, carrying nutrients from the deep to the sunlit surface. This creates an explosion of life. Plankton bloom, attracting fish, which attract sharks, whales, and seabirds. A seamount is a bustling city of life in the middle of the empty open ocean, all gathering around a mountain peak that remains forever submerged in the blue. Sometimes, we learn about the ocean through happy accidents. In 1992, a shipping container traveling from China to the United States fell overboard in the North Pacific during a storm. It broke open and released 8,000 plastic bath toys, yellow ducks, red beavers, blue turtles, and green frogs. These toys, known as the friendly floaties, drifted for decades. Because they are durable and float, they became accidental scientific instruments. They washed up in Alaska, Hawaii, South America, and Australia. Some even froze into the Arctic ice pack, traveled slowly over the North Pole, and thawed out in the Atlantic years later to wash up in Scotland. By tracking where these little yellow ducks landed, oceanographers were able to map the surface currents of the ocean with unprecedented accuracy. It is a whimsical thought, thousands of tiny, smiling ducks bobbing along the high seas, teaching us how the world's waters are connected. Let's go deeper again, to the ancient corals. We often think of coral reefs as shallow, tropical gardens. But there are corals that live deep in the dark, cold waters, known as black corals. Unlike shallow corals, they don't have photosynthetic algae to feed them. They catch particles from the current. Because life is slow in the deep, they grow at an agonizingly slow rate. Some of these colonies off the coast of Hawaii have been carbon, dated to be over 4,000 years old. This means they were alive and growing when the Egyptians were building the pyramids. They were filtering the water when Rome fell. They were there when the first Polynesians sailed across the Pacific. They are the oldest living animals on the planet, silent sentinels standing in the dark, keeping the time of the earth in their slow, growing skeletons. Consider for a moment the salt cycle in a way you might not have before. There are vast salt flats on land, like the Salar de Uyuni, in Bolivia. These are actually the ghosts of ancient oceans. Millions of years ago, the sea covered those lands. When the tectonic plates shifted and lifted the land up, the water was trapped and eventually evaporated, leaving the salt behind. Conversely, under the Mediterranean Sea, there is a layer of salt that is over a mile thick buried beneath the sediment. This tells us that at one point in history, the Mediterranean Sea was cut off from the Atlantic and dried up almost completely. It became a giant salt basin before the dam at Gibraltar broke and the ocean flooded back in. The salt in your shaker and the salt in the sea are part of this endless geological dance of wetting and drying that spans epochs. And let's not forget the ocean's role as a preserver of the sky's history. In certain sedimentary rocks that used to be ancient mudflats, scientists have found fossilized raindrops. These are small craters preserved in the stone where rain fell on soft mud millions of years ago. The mud dried quickly in the sun and was then buried by a new layer of sediment. By measuring the size of these fossilized splashes, scientists can tell how dense the atmosphere was back then. It is a poetic connection, the ocean floor preserving the memory of a rainy Tuesday afternoon from the Jurassic period. As we remain in this quiet, extended space, let's turn our attention to the textures of the ocean. If you were to run your hand along the side of a shark, it would feel very different depending on which direction you moved. From head to tail, it feels smooth, almost like velvet. But if you move your hand from tail to head, it feels like rough sandpaper. This is because shark skin is not made of scales like other fish. It is made of dermal denticles, which translates literally to skin teeth. These are tiny, microscopic tooth, like structures that interlock like shingles on a roof. They are ribbed with grooves that channel the water, reducing friction and drag. It is a marvel of biological engineering. In fact, engineers have studied shark skin to design faster swimsuits for Olympic athletes and more efficient hulls for ships. The shark moves so silently and efficiently because its very skin is designed to cut through the water with zero resistance. While sharks rely on their skin for speed, they rely on a sixth sense to hunt. If you look closely at the nose and snout of a shark, you will see a pattern of tiny black pores that look like stubble. These are called the ampullae of Lorenzini. They are jelly-filled canals that can detect electricity. Every living thing emits a faint electrical field when its heart beats or its muscles contract. A shark can sense the heartbeat of a flounder hidden completely under the sand. They can also use these sensors to detect the Earth's magnetic field, using it like an internal compass to navigate across the featureless open ocean. It is a level of sensitivity that is hard for us to comprehend, feeling the spark of life in the water around you. Let's descend again into the deep to look at one of the most surreal creatures in the ocean, the barrel-eye fish. This fish looks like something from a dream. It lives in the deep twilight zone where sunlight is faint. To capture every possible photon, it has developed tubular eyes that point upward. But the strangest part is that its head is completely transparent. It has a fluid-filled dome, like shield over its face that you can see right through. Inside this clear canopy, you can see its bright green eyes moving. This transparent shield protects its sensitive eyes from the stinging tentacles of the jellyfish it steals food from. Watching a barrel eye hover in the dark, with its glowing green eyes looking up through its own transparent skull, is a reminder that nature's imagination is limitless. Deeper still, in the crushing pressures of the Mariana Trench, lives the deepest fish ever discovered, the Mariana snailfish. You might expect a deep sea creature to look armored and tough to withstand the pressure, which is equivalent to an elephant standing on your thumb. But the snailfish is the opposite. It is small, pink, and incredibly soft. It has no scales, and its skin is thin and gelatinous. Its bones are not fully calcified. They are flexible. It survives by being fluid, by not resisting the pressure but becoming one with it. It glides effortlessly in the eternal dark, a fragile-looking ghost that conquers the most hostile environment on Earth simply by being soft. Let's drift back to the surface to consider the tenderness of marine mammals. Have you ever wondered how a baby whale nurses underwater without swallowing gallons of salt water? It is a logistical challenge. Whale milk is very different from the milk we buy at the store. It has the consistency of toothpaste. It is roughly 50% fat. When the calf nudges the mother actively ejects the thick, rich milk into the water. Because it is so dense and fatty, it doesn't dissolve immediately. It holds its form long enough for the calf to slurp it up. This high, fat diet allows baby whales to gain weight at an astonishing rate. A blue whale calf gains about 200 pounds every single day just from this rich, dense milk. Sometimes, the ocean produces a treasure that floats. For centuries, sailors would occasionally find waxy, gray lumps washing up on beaches or floating in the sea. This substance is called ambergris. It is produced in the digestive system of sperm whales to coat the sharp beaks of the squid they eat, protecting their insides. When it is expelled, it floats on the ocean surface, baking in the sun and curing in the salt for years. As it ages, it develops a sweet, earthy, musk-like scent. For a long time, ambergris was worth more than its weight in gold because it was used as a fixative in the world's finest perfumes, making scents last longer on the skin. It is a strange alchemy, waste from a giant predator transforming into one of the most coveted scents in human history. Let's look at a living fossil that carries mathematics in its shell, the nautilus. These creatures have roamed the oceans for nearly 500 million years, surviving every major mass extinction. The nautilus lives inside a spiral shell that is a perfect example of the golden ratio, or a logarithmic spiral. As the nautilus grows, it builds new, larger chambers and seals off the old ones behind it. It lives only in the newest, largest chamber. The empty chambers behind it are used as buoyancy tanks. By pumping gas and water in and out of these sealed rooms, the nautilus can rise and fall in the water column like a submarine. During the day, they hide in the deep dark to avoid predators, and at night, they slowly rise up the reef to hunt. They are ancient mathematicians, oscillating in the dark, carrying a perfect spiral of geometry on their backs. In the shallow, sandy waters of Indonesia, there is an octopus that is a master of disguise, but not just by changing color. It is called the mimic octopus. Most octopuses hide by blending into rocks. The mimic octopus, however, hides by pretending to be other animals. If it is threatened by a damselfish, it will stuff 6 of its legs into a hole and wave the other 2 black and white-banded legs in opposite directions, moving them exactly like a venomous sea snake. If it needs to cross an open area, it will pull all its legs together to form a flat leaf shape and swim using an undulating motion, perfectly mimicking a toxic soulfish. It can imitate a lionfish, a jellyfish, and even a crab. It is an actor, observing the dangerous animals around it and putting on a costume to stay safe. Let's consider the humble sea sponge. It sits motionless on the reef, looking like a plant or a rock. But it is an animal, and it is a powerhouse of filtration. A sponge is essentially a living water pump. If you were to put a non-toxic fluorescent dye at the base of a sponge, you would see it vanish into the sponge's walls and then, seconds later, shoot out of the top like a chimney smoke. A basketball-sized sponge can filter nearly 5,000 gallons of water in a single day. They strip the water of bacteria and particles, keeping the coral reef water crystal clear. Without these silent, stationary pumps, the vibrant blue water of the reef would be cloudy and murky. We spoke earlier of mysterious sounds, but let's talk about the loudest sound ever recorded underwater, the bloop. In 1997, hydrophones across the Pacific Ocean detected an ultra-low-frequency sound that was incredibly loud. It was heard by sensors thousands of miles apart. For years, people speculated it was a giant unknown sea monster, far larger than a blue whale. It sparked imaginations everywhere. However, years later, scientists confirmed the source, and it was perhaps even more majestic than a monster. It was the sound of a massive ice quake. It was a large iceberg cracking and fracturing away from the Antarctic shelf. The sound of the ice breaking was so powerful, it traveled across the entire ocean basin. It reminds us that the planet itself is dynamic, shifting and groaning in the deep south, singing a song of geology. Let's look up from our ocean to the cosmic ocean once more. We mentioned Europa before, but there is another moon circling Saturn, called Enceladus. It is a tiny, bright white ball of ice. In 2005, the Cassini spacecraft discovered something incredible. At the south pole of Enceladus, there are cracks in the ice dubbed tiger stripes. Shooting out of these cracks are massive geysers of water vapor and ice grains, blasting hundreds of miles into space. These plumes are coming from a warm, saltwater ocean hidden beneath the ice shell. The geysers are so powerful that they actually form one of Saturn's rings, the E ring. It means that Enceladus is constantly sharing its ocean with the solar system, spraying its salt water into the void. It is a beautiful thought. A tiny moon with a hidden heart of ocean, creating a ring of ice around a giant planet. And so, we slowly begin our return from the deep. We leave the silent, frozen valleys of the abyss, rising gently past the glowing lights of the mid-water, drifting up through the currents where the whales sing, and finally breaking the surface to find the night sky waiting for us. We have traveled across the world tonight without ever leaving where we are. We have seen that the ocean is not just water. It is a living, breathing history of our planet. It is a place of giants and microscopic jewels, of violent storms and perfect, eternal stillness. As you lie there now, let yourself hold on to that image of the deep ocean. Imagine that deep, untouched calm residing within you. Just as the storms on the surface cannot disturb the quiet of the deep sea, the worries and busyness of your day cannot reach the peaceful place you have found right now. You are safe, you are warm, and you are part of this vast, rhythmic world. The ocean will keep moving while you sleep. The tides will rise and fall. The currents will circulate warmth around the globe, and the sea stars will creep slowly across the sand. It will all continue in its perfect, natural cycle, so you don't have to worry about a thing. You can let go. You can let your breathing mimic the slow, steady wash of the waves on the shore. In and out, rising and falling. Thank you for spending this time with me here on Slience. It has been a pleasure to guide you through these blue wonders. I hope the stories of our blue planet have helped you find a moment of quiet in a loud world. If you found peace in these waters tonight, please remember to subscribe and like the video. It helps us keep this sanctuary open for you and for others who need a place to rest. But for now, the journey is over. The stars are out, the sea is calm, and the night is yours. Drift away on the gentle currents of sleep. Good night.